Okay, so welcome again, Russ Scala, to my channel.
Hi, everybody.
He's the author of The American Biohacker, as you must know by now, and we're always talking about very tip of the spear information with the very experienced Russ. So tonight I wanted to ask you about the need for TRT for astronauts and their space flights. So tell us about that, Russ.
Please like and subscribe. Thank you.
And hit that notification bell so you won't miss anything.
Yeah, the trip to Mars is going to be it's going to take us 8 months to get there and 8 months to get back. And what I realized, Stephen, is that everything we're talking about here, even at the highest level of NASA, SpaceX, and Blue Origin, all the new flights and the new space programs, they're not even considering TRT. Stephen, one of the things that we realized about space flight and the research that I've done with NASA, SpaceX, and Blue Origins is how do we prevent muscle wasting? And one of the books that I took a deep dive in was Scott Kelly. Scott Kelly was an astronaut that the first astronaut to spend a year in space. And he had a twin brother that stayed on the ground. And after he spent that year in space, what happened to him when he came back? His second day he came back, his book starts about how inflamed he was, how he could barely walk. He had bone and mineral loss. He had atrophy of the heart, and he had muscle wasting, even with running 2 hours on a treadmill. So when I started doing a deep dive into the treatment protocols and looking at the diet of the astronauts, it was 6 meals a day, elevating insulin levels, elevating blood glucose. They didn't do any form of TRT to prevent muscle wasting. There was no baseline being done. So Stephen, my point and what I'm trying to say is that even at the level of NASA, the stuff we're discussing here is not being done because the treatment protocols that are designed by even the nutritionalists at Harvard are too high in carbohydrates. One of the things that happened when Scott Kelly spent a year in space, he had too much fluid in his brain and he had to wear a special suit to pull the fluid out of his brain so he could think and so he could work. And if you think about it, the ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting on a cellular level decreases fluid. Now, if his heart had atrophy and he had muscle wasting, why wouldn't they do baseline testosterone testing, baseline thyroid testing? Because being up in space where he was at that level, that's equal to getting like, I think, 11 x-rays into the chest. So there's a lot of oxidative stress going on up there, and he had prostate cancer. So was the prostate cancer part of the oxidative stress that was brought on by being so close to the sun and spending a year in the space station? The way he describes it, on his second day back from space, he was having a family dinner and every bit of his body hurt. He was in a pro-inflammatory response. He could barely walk to the bed. And all he was taking was ibuprofen and taking anti-inflammatories. And this opportunity that I see for all of us here is that NASA needs this information along with SpaceX and Blue Origins. And Stephen, what we're talking about here in this group can affect muscle wasting in an astronaut. It can affect left ventricular function if somebody has heart atrophy, okay, as an astronaut. So if Elon Musk wants to make an 8-month journey to Mars and back, think about what's going to happen to the human metabolism. We are not designed to be in a weightless environment. We are not designed to get that type of DNA damage with that much radiation. I mean, in the past, I've studied airline pilots at 30,000 feet that was oxidizing LDL cholesterol, and I tried to get American Airlines to do sublipid fractionalization testing, and they didn't bite off on it. So, you know, there's a TRT opportunity here. There's a nutritional opportunity because the food that these astronauts were eating was way too high in carbohydrates, causing a pro-inflammatory response that was exacerbating their time in space and making fluid build up in the brain. And then they would come back to Earth and they had severe muscle wasting and bone wasting. Some of the astronauts have had broken hips. So how do we avoid that? Well, it's the same thing that we do with TRT for the elderly. I did a muscle wasting program on the Russ Scala YouTube channel that speaks to all the reasons of muscle wasting. It's 4 minutes. This is the same muscle wasting program that I would plug in to NASA or SpaceX. And I knew I was onto something because, 5 years ago, when I developed an advanced brain injury protocol, I was contacted by a company and met with them that was called Advanced Anti-Terror Technologies. They were consultants to DARPA. And I'm thinking, like, I always assumed that NASA and DARPA had all this information. And a lot of times they don't. So I was kind of shocked. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for the docs here, for you, for us to get the word out and to help. If they want to do a Mars trip, I think the information we share here would be very valuable to NASA, SpaceX, and Blue Origins.
Yeah, for sure. And how come that the doctors that surely must track the astronauts very closely, that they are clueless about hormone optimization? How is that possible?
Well, I mean, I think they studied the telomere length, that Scott Kelly's telomeres did lengthen when he was in space, but then when he came back, they went back to normal. I just think, Stephen, like, this is no different than the cardiology community. There's 10,000 cardiologists in the United States that still think that fat causes heart attacks and fat does not cause heart attacks. So I think it's one of those things. I think that what you and I are talking about here is some disruptive technology that the science is already done and out there, but it's not being applied by the gurus at NASA right now. I mean, wouldn't it be great to optimize somebody before a space flight and then optimize them when they get back home so they can live the quality of life that they need?
Sure. And so the question is, will you be reaching out to NASA and to SpaceX?
Yeah, I got a call into Scott Kelly, his website. You have to, pay him to do presentations. I want to reach out to Scott Kelly, who spent a year in space, and maybe do some testing on him and let him do a video on the research that we're doing and what wasn't being done at NASA. And again, I'm not trying to shoot anybody down. I just want this guy to stay better because I think he would be a great spokesperson for everything that we're trying to do worldwide here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so thank you for starting us on this topic and opening us our eyes to this. So we will follow this up because I don't know when the Mars flights are planned, but we will surely reach Elon Musk before they take off.
You know what I like, Stephen, and I love all the guys here. Everybody here is a thinker. Everyone here is an outside the box. Everyone here is an innovator. All the docs that we have, Danny, Basa, all these guys are thinkers. And I can't do this alone, but I sure could help plant a seed, right?
Sure. So thank you again, Russ. So we'll end this interview here and talk to you next time. Thank you.
Okay, see you, brother. Thank you.
Thanks.